It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind of slow hour when a shopping mall forgets it is a temple of capitalism and becomes, for just a moment, a public square. The fluorescent lights at Marina Mall hummed overhead like bored bureaucrats, and the polished marble reflected silhouettes of people with nowhere urgent to be. And sitting among them, hood up, sunglasses on, sweatshirt bearing a faded CUNY Law logo, was Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, enjoying the rarest luxury in public service: invisibility. No press conference, no security detail trailing behind her with earpieces and furrowed brows. Just her, a $6 pretzel, and the stubborn idea that she could exist for one afternoon without being a headline. She had ducked out of a D.C. legal forum that morning under the guise of personal errands, which wasn't entirely false. Rediscovering what it felt like to walk unrecognized among everyday people was, in its own way, urgent business. A sales associate had tried to offer her a perfume sample at the department store entrance. "Ma'am, would you like to try our holiday fragrance?" But thought better of it the moment she saw the look in Letitia's eyes. Not rude, but firm. The kind of look that says, "I've argued in federal court before lunch. I don't need top notes of jasmine to complete my afternoon." Letitia walked on without a word, her sneakers scuffing softly against the floor. They were not designers. They were not intended to impress. And that was the point. She'd wandered into a bookstore for cover and found comfort between the fiction and the biographies. Ironic, given how often the two overlapped. A teenage girl near the fantasy section was chattering to her friend. "I swear, this book reminds me of that lady from the news, the one who took on the entire Supreme Court. You know who I mean, right?" Letitia smirked beneath her hood and retreated quickly to the nonfiction aisle. She didn't need recognition. She needed a moment to breathe. At the pretzel stand, tucked behind the escalators, the vendor barely looked up. "What can I get you?" "Small pretzel, no salt." $3.50. She paid in cash. Crumpled bills, not a government card, not a staffer swiping for her. A small act of independence, or defiance, maybe both. She found a bench near the fountain. Not the Instagram-famous one near the center atrium, but the older one by the flowerless planter that no one photographed. That was exactly why she chose it. As she ate, she watched life unfold in fragments. A mom struggling with a stroller, two retirees arguing about coupons, a boy trying, and failing, to pull off a leather jacket look. Letitia's phone buzzed. "Everything okay?" her aide texted. "You need anything?" She typed back. "Still resting." All good. Technically, not a lie. She was resting. From politics, from optics, from the endless theater of public life. Across the fountain, a couple was mid-argument. "It's a business expense," the man insisted. "A third espresso machine is not a business expense," the woman shot back. Letitia let out a soft chuckle, then silenced it quickly. Too human, too revealing. She sipped her water. By now the mall had begun to fill. Teenagers gathered by the railing, some taking selfies, some pretending not to. A security guard passed by, gave her a neutral glance, kept walking. That glance, too, was a kind of privilege. Not being noticed, not being feared, not being asked for ID. Letitia leaned back, letting her spine rest against the metal bench. It felt cold. It felt honest. She opened her phone. News alerts, comment threads, photos of her in court, at rallies, on the steps of the Capitol. Her name attached to words like fighter, controversial, unapologetic. None of those words felt real today. Today she was just a woman with tired feet and the smell of pretzel butter on her fingers, and somewhere nearby, A woman's voice rang out, shrill and certain. "Did you hear? Letitia James is supposed to be in D.C. for that gala tomorrow." The irony almost made her laugh. Almost. "Did you hear? Letitia James is supposed to be in D.C. for that gala tomorrow." "Oh, wow, I'd love to meet her. My husband thinks she's terrifying. My daughter thinks she's Beyoncé in a pantsuit." "Good luck with that. She probably never goes anywhere without a dozen bodyguards and a speechwriter." Letitia smirked behind her shades. The pretzel had vanished. So had the illusion of distance between her and the world she served. It was time to resume her original mission. Walk like a citizen, shop like one, blend in without needing to blend up. She drifted toward the main corridor, passing a chorus of teenagers who, ironically, were singing a campaign parody jingle made about her during the last state election. "Letitia, don't play, don't plead, don't sway." They were off-key but enthusiastic, and completely unaware that the subject of their song was less than 20 feet away, inspecting clearance racks like an undercover civics professor. In a boutique with air conditioning calibrated to litigation chill, she wandered through racks of overpriced linen. It felt oddly grounding to browse without someone hovering nearby, asking if she'd prefer the blazer in influence blue or cabinet gray. When the associate offered, "Can I help you find anything?" she replied without missing a beat, "Only if you carry moral clarity in a size medium." They laughed. She didn't. It was while inspecting a plain black sweater, classic, durable, uncontroversial, that she heard it. "She's still sitting there." "Yeah, near the fountain, in that oversized thing. Security really ought to step in. These types always linger." Letitia's fingers curled around the hanger. That tone. That unmistakable tone of suburban enforcement. The kind that polices shopping carts and public benches with the energy of a small-town autocrat. She moved to another rack, silently reminding herself that she had asked for this invisibility. But there was something about hearing your presence downgraded from citizen to security concern that stuck like a burr. A text buzzed in. "Dinner with donors at 6. You joining?" She stared at it. The world of catered morality and donor gloss felt planets away. Just a few more minutes, she told herself. A few more minutes of being unprofiled. She returned to her bench, the same bench by the fountain, the same bench now apparently hosting a threat to democracy. The sunlight slanted through the skylight, cutting soft gold lines across the tile. Shoppers moved past in choreography, bags swinging, phones glowing, eyes trained to avoid contact. Then, heels. Sharp, expensive, and purposeful. A woman in her 50s approached with the smug determination of someone who collects HOA violations like trophies. She carried herself like she had never been denied a return at Nordstrom. Her eyes scanned Letitia's sweatshirt with the precision of a barcode scanner and found nothing worth respecting. "We don't allow soliciting here," the woman announced, her voice so clipped it could have trimmed hedges. Letitia didn't look up. Not yet. She'd heard worse from better people. But the woman doubled down. "I said we don't allow soliciting. Are you even listening?" Letitia kept her eyes on her screen. Silence was often a test, and entitled people hate tests they didn't write. "Security!" the woman called, loud enough to summon every pearl-wearing busybody within 100-foot radius. "We have another one by the fountain." Shoppers slowed their pace. Nothing excites the morally bankrupt like the scent of a public shaming. Letitia could feel the shift, the gaze. She exhaled. "I'm not soliciting," she said quietly. "I'm just sitting here." "Oh, please." the woman huffed. "I've watched you for over an hour. You're obviously waiting to beg. Or worse. This is a premium shopping center, not a homeless shelter." Letitia turned, finally. She had prosecuted financial crimes worth billions, held corrupt officials accountable, debated constitutional law under oath, and here she was, being accused of loitering for wearing the wrong cotton blend. "You're making assumptions," she said, her tone flat but deliberate. "The kind your kind always wraps in charitable excuses." And right on cue, the woman replied with the smug crescendo of every gated soul since time began. "I donate to appropriate charities." Of course she did. And just like that, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. The crowd, already building, leaned in. Because nothing spells American spectacle like the moment a woman in head-to-toe Chanel tries to morally audit the Attorney General of New York and fails to recognize her. The scene had only just begun. "I don't need to be harassed while shopping," Mrs. Delaney hissed with the conviction of someone who once chaired a country club diversity committee and thought it was the March on Washington. Frank, the mall security guard, ambled into view like a man called not to de-escalate a situation, but to clock in for another episode of entitled Woman versus Public Space. He was not in a rush. He had seen this dance before, always starring someone like Mrs. Delaney and someone definitely not like Letitia James. "Everything okay here, Mrs. Delaney?" he asked, his voice glazed with weary politeness. He didn't need a script. He'd rehearsed it 100 times. Just swap the target. "No, everything is not okay, Frank," she snapped, gesturing at Letitia like she was reporting a raccoon in the salad bar. "This person has been loitering all afternoon. God knows what she's planning to steal." Let us pause here to appreciate the Freudian comedy of a woman wearing $4,000 in designer leather accusing a stranger of theft, without evidence, without context, and most importantly, without shame. Frank turned to Letitia. "Ma'am," he said. Tone clipped, rehearsed. "Can you please stand up?" Letitia didn't move. Her phone remained in her palm like a legal brief that didn't need reading to be understood. "I haven't done anything wrong." And that was it. That was enough to trigger the moral panic of upper crust hysteria. "Stand up!" Mrs. Delaney shrieked, lunging forward with all the subtlety of a school board banning books. "Show some respect." Her manicured hand, a hand likely honored at charity luncheons for its generosity, latched onto Letitia's arm, and in that moment, the disguise dissolved. Literally. The hood dropped, the glasses tilted, and her identity, like every indictment she'd ever filed, came into full view. Letitia James, New York's sitting Attorney General, stood up, and the entire mall, previously content to spectate with the moral energy of wallpaper, gasped in unison. Phones were already up, because America may be divided on healthcare and taxes, but not on what constitutes a viral moment. Mrs. Delaney stumbled backward as if struck by truth itself. Her heel caught the tile, a design flaw surely, and she nearly fell. I, she stammered, mascara blinking at the camera lenses. "You didn't know it was me," Letitia said, voice calm, scalpel sharp. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" It was not a question. It was a verdict. Frank's radio crackled. "Frank, we've got a situation at the fountain." "Over?" came the response. "Yeah," Frank muttered, his eyes fixed on the woman whose job description included dismantling entire institutions, and who now stood before him, disrespected for daring to exist in sweatpants. "You could say that." Mrs. Delaney backpedaled, heels clacking a hasty retreat, though there was nowhere left to go. The crowd had thickened, like moral clarity finally congealing. A voice yelled, "It's her! It's Letitia James!" And suddenly, 50 phones became 500. Letitia didn't move. One hand rubbed the spot on her arm where Delaney's nails had left their signature. It stung, but not more than the fact that she'd been one wrong headline away from being escorted out under suspicion of existing while unfashionable. I didn't know," Delaney croaked, her face rearranged from righteousness to ruin. "You have to understand, I didn't." Letitia cut her off with a stare. Not angry, disappointed, which for a public servant carries the same weight as an indictment. From the crowd, "She assaulted you. Look at your arm." Mrs. Delaney spun, now auditioning for a role in the genre known as reputation rescue. No, I was just trying to protect everyone." "From what?" Letitia asked, voice still but charged. "From the crime of sitting quietly in your field of vision?" Silence. "Problems with what?" Letitia repeated, her eyes narrowing. "With anyone who doesn't match your country club upholstery." No one laughed. It was too real. But every phone was still filming. And this, dear reader, is where the stakes changed. Not just for Mrs. Delaney, not just for Letitia James, but for every person watching who'd ever been asked to prove they belonged. What came next would not be a trial in court, but in public conscience. And for once, the crowd was finally paying attention. "Problems with people who don't look rich enough for your taste?" Letitia's voice carried across the marble like a courtroom echo, crisp and loaded. A line that in any Senate hearing would have sent aides scrambling for statement control. But here, it just froze the air. The perimeter was collapsing. Mall security tried forming a buffer, but the crowd had tripled, spilling into the walkway like a flash mob of reckoning. Employees stood in doorways, holding phones. One barista climbed onto the espresso counter like it was a witness stand. America's favorite spectator sport, public humiliation, was in full swing. And this wasn't reality TV. This was reality fighting back. "Someone call the police," a voice yelled from deep in the crowd. Of course, when in doubt, escalate, preferably against the person not wearing pearls. "No," Letitia said, raising her hand like she was about to overrule a bad objection. "No police." Mrs. Delaney, who had earlier sounded like a Supreme Court ruling in heels, now ran her fingers through her collapsing hairstyle like it might shield her from accountability. "You don't understand," she stammered. "There've been incidents, people begging, harassing shoppers. I was just trying to—" "To what?" Letitia cut her off, the words like gavel strikes. "To rough up someone you thought was homeless? Does violence sound more respectable when delivered in Chanel?" Margaret, the customer service manager, elbowed her way through the crowd, looking like she had just been promoted to accidental crisis mediator. "Mrs. Delaney, I think we should go to my office." "No," Letitia said again, more forcefully. "We're not whispering this into a backroom file. You wanted public, so here we are." A murmur swept through the crowd. Facebook Live had entered the chat. At least 3 teenagers began narrating events like amateur court reporters. "I've been sitting here for hours," Letitia continued, voice deliberate, "watching people. You know what I saw? Teenagers sharing a pretzel because they could only afford one. A mother counting quarters to buy her kid a paperback. Were they all threats too? Or just inconvenient to your aesthetic?" Mrs. Delaney's mascara, likely retailing at $90 a tube, was beginning to migrate. "This isn't who I am," she insisted, the universal anthem of people caught being exactly who they are. "I donate, I support charities. To what? Letitia fired back. The right kind of poor? The ones you don't have to smell or hear or see while shopping? It was surgical. From the crowd, a young man in a suit stepped forward. I saw everything, he said. She grabbed her. I got it all on video. Mrs. Delaney spun around, voice cracking like glassware at a fundraiser. Delete that right now. You have no right. No right? Letitia interrupted, deadpan. Like you had no right to put your hands on me? Cue the mall manager, power walking in like a man told he had 15 seconds to salvage PR disaster. Miss James, I cannot apologize enough. If you'll come with me, we can… What's your name? Letitia asked, eyes fixed on the woman now shrinking behind her legal counsel. Patricia, came the whispered answer. Patricia Delaney, Letitia said, stepping forward. Tell me something, Patricia. When you saw me sitting there, what exactly made you think I was homeless? Was it the clothes, the silence, or was it just the color palette that didn't match the marble? No answer, but the silence screamed. A woman in scrubs called out, She did the same thing to my brother last month. He was waiting after the gym. She called security on him. Others joined in. She told my kids to move off that bench. She tried to report the janitor for loitering. She asked a cop to remove the UPS guy. And now the designer outfit hung off Patricia like a costume caught in a floodlight. Every inch of social armor melting under the weight of public memory. A man shoved his way forward, suit pristine, voice firm. David Cohen, attorney at law. Mrs. Delaney, don't say another word. A lawyer? Letitia let out a laugh. It was dry, sharp, and void of mirth. Of course. This is clearly a misunderstanding, Cohen began, positioning himself between Letitia and the wreckage of decorum. My client was concerned about public safety. And your client assaulted me, Letitia cut in, voice flat as a judge's ruling. Or does that not count because she thought I was beneath assault? The perimeter held now, but barely. Hundreds watched, dozens recorded, and somewhere above, people leaned over balconies, peering down not at a scandal, but at a slow, unraveling sermon. Then, a teen girl stepped forward, face streaked with tears, voice shaking. My mom works at the shelter downtown. People like her. She pointed at Patricia. That's why some folks are afraid to ask for help. They're treated like they don't even exist. The lawyer pivoted again. Miss James, surely we can reach some arrangement. Letitia's voice rose, clean and undeniable. The next blow was coming, but it wouldn't be legal. It would be moral. You think this is about money? About avoiding a lawsuit? Patricia's voice cracked like a pane of glass under pressure, her composure finally slipping off the bone. Then what do you want from me? She demanded, tone sharp with the desperation of someone who just realized privilege is not a bulletproof vest. Letitia didn't rush her answer. She let the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone feel it. The weight of the question. The weight of being a woman publicly mistaken for a nuisance because she wore sneakers instead of heels. I want you to really think about what you did today, Letitia said evenly. Not because it was me, but because it could have been someone else, someone's mother, someone's kid, someone already having the kind of day that ends with a half-eaten pretzel and no one left to call. A small child pointed at Patricia, now visibly crying, and whispered, Mommy, why is that lady melting? Which, frankly, was not far from the truth. Her makeup, once a wall of curated perfection, had become mascara graffiti on a collapsing facade. Her lawyer looked like he'd rather be buried under the nearest department store display table. "Miss James," the mall manager stepped in again, still laboring under the illusion that bureaucracy could solve conscience. "Let us handle this internally. We'll ensure appropriate—" "You're all missing the point," Letitia cut in, with the precision of a closing argument. "This is not about me. It's not about one incident. It's about what happens when we decide some people don't belong. It's about how fast a woman in Harvard sweats can become public enemy number one if her shoes aren't shiny enough." She turned to Patricia, who now sat like a cautionary tale wrapped in a wrinkled Chanel suit. "You want to know what's really sad? I could buy this entire mall and write it off as a footnote on my taxes, but none of that mattered to you. Because the moment you saw someone who didn't match your catalog of acceptability, you didn't see a person. You saw a problem to be removed." David, the lawyer, was now scribbling like he could sue gravity if it helped. Meanwhile, Patricia just stood there, foundation streaking, designer bag limp like a flag of surrender. Patricia stammered. "I don't know what to say." "That," Letitia said coldly, "is the most honest thing you've said all day." The crowd shifted as a commotion from the back revealed her security detail finally breaching the human barricade. "Boss, we need to move now," her lead agent called out. "Not yet," Letitia said, lifting a single hand. Not to command, just to pause. Because some truths don't land unless you let them echo. "You know what the worst part is?" she continued, turning back to Patricia. "If I actually had been homeless, no one would have cared. No one would have filmed. No one would be outraged. It would have just been another day at Marina Mall." The words landed with the impact of a federal indictment. Phones lowered, faces dropped. No one spoke. Patricia sank onto the bench as if gravity had finally remembered she wasn't special. "Mrs. Delaney," her lawyer muttered in full panic, "please stop talking." "David," she said softly, then louder, "David, she's right. She's right about everything." Letitia didn't smile. Justice wasn't a mood. It was a process. Then came the janitor. "Mrs. Delaney called security on me 3 times last month," Carlos said, stepping forward. "Said I was lurking. I was emptying trash." Patricia flinched. "Carlos has worked here for 12 years, the manager blurted out, color draining from his face. "I wasn't aware," he added quickly. "Of course you weren't aware," Letitia said. "People like her count on people like you not being aware." Then came more voices. "She called security on my kid for sitting too long." "She told the UPS guy to wait outside." "She asked if my grandma was panhandling." Each accusation hit like a brick. Patricia hunched under them, her spine folding as if the weight of her own behavior was too much to carry. "These allegations are unsubstantiated." The lawyer tried again, this time with the legal equivalent of duct tape over a gaping wound. "And I did it," Patricia said, so softly it took the entire mall a second to catch it. "I did all of it. Worse." Her lawyer looked like he had just aged 10 years. "Please, Mrs. Delaney." "No." She stood, legs shaking like scaffolding during demolition. "I've spent years turning this mall into my kingdom, deciding who belongs and who doesn't. Why? To feel important? To feel like I mattered?" She looked around, eyes glistening now, not with tears but with clarity. "Do you know what I do?" she asked, voice rising. She wasn't asking Letitia anymore. She was confessing to the entire building. I sit on 3 charity boards. I raise money for the homeless. I cut checks. I give speeches. I get photographed. And then I walk into this mall, my mall, and I treat actual people like garbage. That's the truth. She let the silence take her, and finally, she named it. The duality of performance. I'm on 3 charity boards, Patricia confessed, her voice pitched just above the rising murmur. I organize fundraisers for the homeless. I write checks. I pose for photos at galas. She blinked, her face a ruined canvas of what once passed for perfection. And I treat actual people like garbage. Letitia didn't flinch. Her response came quiet, but scalpel precise. The duality of performance charity, she said. Helping people, as long as they stay in their designated spaces, right? Patricia's eyeliner, now a war zone of regret, slid down her cheekbones in silent retreat. I don't even recognize myself anymore, she said, wiping at her face only to smear the damage deeper. When did I become this person? Her lawyer had surrendered. He stood to the side, texting like he was applying for new clients mid-crisis. One of Letitia's security staff leaned in. Boss, media's been alerted. News vans are outside. At least 3 helicopters. The mall's general manager attempted another intervention, his voice trembling with the tone of a man watching his quarterly bonus evaporate. Miss James, Mrs. Delaney, please. We can move this to my office and— No, they both said at once. Patricia turned to the crowd, not as a woman giving a speech, but as someone realizing her reflection is not flattering. Her eyes found Carlos, the janitor. I'm sorry, she said. To all of you, I'm so sorry. From the back, sorry you got caught. No, Patricia replied. Sorry because I've been blind, willfully blind. Letitia nodded, just slightly. That's a start, but you do understand that's not enough, right? I know, Patricia whispered. I know it's not. I don't even know where to begin. Margaret, the customer service manager, cleared her throat, voice as dry as a corporate memo. You could start by showing up to those monthly community meetings, the ones you always call a bad look for them all. Patricia nodded like a woman finally reading her own press clippings. Yes, I will. I can do that. Letitia raised a brow. And maybe, she added, you could visit the shelters you fund. You know, talk to the people you help instead of just laundering guilt through checkbooks. I will. I'll do anything. Patricia looked around the crowd, as if searching for a way out and realizing for once there wasn't one. I just want to be better than this person I've become. The sound of helicopters throbbed through the glass ceiling. The story was no longer theirs to contain. It had grown wings, buzzed cameras, crawled into live feeds. Patricia's ruin was now a public artifact. Boss, Letitia's lead guard said again, more urgent this time. This is about to get out of control. We've got multiple exits covered. But Letitia's gaze stayed locked on Patricia, who now sat like a failed exhibit in the Museum of Moral Superiority. That Chanel suit, once a uniform of quiet authority, now sagged like a costume from a play nobody applauded. A young reporter squeezed forward. Miss James, can you comment on the assault? This isn't about assault, Letitia said. Her voice, as always, carried without needing to rise. This is about something bigger. Patricia looked up, eyes puffy, lips trembling. I don't understand. Why aren't you pressing charges? Why are you even still talking to me? The crowd bristled. Many phones tilted closer, hungry for confrontation. But Letitia didn't give them a soundbite. She gave them substance. Because pressing charges would be easy, she said, slowly sitting next to Patricia on the same bench that had started it all. Running away would be easy. And sometimes, we have to do the hard things. She didn't speak with revenge. She spoke with resolve. And somewhere in that moment, even the phones paused recording, because they sensed something real was happening, something no headline could package. The mall's general manager was practically jittering in place now, sweat beading beneath his collar like it, too, wanted to escape the moment. Miss James, the media presence is becoming a safety concern. We really need to... Let them watch. Letitia cut in, her eyes locked on Patricia. Let them record. Maybe we all need to see this. Maybe for once, the truth deserves a press conference. She turned fully toward Patricia. No legalese, no brand strategy, no PR-filtered contrition. Tell me something real, not what your lawyer whispered, not what'll trend well on Channel 5. Tell me something true. Patricia's hands twisted in her lap, her diamond ring reflecting the overhead lights like a reminder of all the illusions she had bought into. I don't know how to be real anymore. Everything about me is scripted. Even my apologies come pre-approved. That's a start, Letitia said, her tone steady, almost quiet. Keep going. There was a pause. Then Patricia inhaled deeply, and when she spoke, the words trembled. I grew up in a trailer park in Oklahoma. Dirt poor. My mom worked nights. I swore I'd never end up back there. I married up, moved here, changed my name, my voice, my rules, and somewhere along the way, I became the kind of woman who would have looked down on my own mother. The crowd hushed. Phones stopped moving. For the first time in 20 minutes, it wasn't about recording. It was about listening. Do you know what it's like? She said, voice cracking. To be so terrified of being less than that you become. This person who thinks policing a bench somehow proves you've made it? A woman near the fountain, middle-aged, wearing faded scrubs, stepped forward. I clean houses for a living. Last month you reported me to my agency because I was eating lunch in my car. Said I was lowering property values. I lost the client. Patricia's face folded in on itself. God, I remember that. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't cover rent, the woman replied. Letitia watched Patricia flinch, then stepped closer. See, this is real. These are real people, real consequences. I know that now, Patricia whispered. Then, from the crowd, Mrs. Delaney? It was Jake, the teen from the pretzel stand, nervously clutching his apron. You got me written up last week for sitting down during my break. Said it looked unprofessional. I was just tired. Before her lawyer could jump in with a legal deflection, Patricia raised a hand. I need to hear this, all of it. And they came. You told security my kid looked suspicious for reading too long in the food court. You asked a cop to check my mom's mobility scooter. You reported a man for standing still too long near the elevator. Each line hit like a shovel. Patricia didn't defend. She absorbed. Her posture hunched, her voice all but gone. I'm a monster, she whispered. I've become a complete monster. No, Letitia said firmly, cutting through the spiral. Monsters don't feel remorse. Monsters don't sit here and listen to every voice they tried to silence. You're just a person who lost her way. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it? A local reporter, young, patient-eyed, had snuck up near the edge of the fountain. She didn't raise her mic. She just sat cross-legged on the floor, like everyone else had missed the assignment, and she'd read the syllabus. I don't know how to fix this, Patricia admitted. "I don't even know where to begin." Carlos, the janitor, stepped forward. Again, steady, kind, tired. "Maybe start by seeing us, really seeing us. Not as threats, not as clutter, not as background noise to your shopping playlist, but as people." Letitia nodded. "That's exactly it. When you saw me sitting here, you didn't see a person. You saw a disruption, a flaw in the mall's brand aesthetic." Patricia's voice was thin. "But I was the disruption, wasn't I? I was the one poisoning the space and calling it protection." Margaret, the customer service manager, stepped in, not as a fixer, but as a witness. She handed Patricia a tissue box and said, "You know those outreach programs? The ones you fought every board meeting? The ones you said brought the wrong energy to the building? Maybe it's time you attended one." Patricia took the box like it weighed more than her guilt. "I'd like that. I think I need that." Letitia's security detail still hovered nearby, nervous, eyes flicking to doorways and exits. But something in the air had shifted. What began as tension now lingered like possibility. "You want to hear something funny?" Letitia said, adjusting her worn CUNY law sweatshirt that now looked more regal than robes. "I came here today trying to feel like a regular person, and instead, I got a front row seat to how power really works when it thinks no one is watching." She wasn't done. But the next thing she said would hit harder than anything yet. "I came here today trying to feel normal," Letitia said, her voice low but unwavering. "Trying to remember what it's like to just exist in a space without being judged, watched, labeled, or celebrated. But instead, I got a front row seat to how people really treat each other when they think no one important is watching." The word hit like a gavel. Patricia winced. "Important." She repeated it like it was foreign on her tongue. "I never realized. I always knew I was difficult, but I never thought I'd become the villain in someone else's story." Letitia turned to her, gaze steady. "That's the thing about privilege, Patricia. It blinds you to your own impact. It convinces you you're neutral, while everyone else is navigating your fallout." The crowd was no longer filming. They were listening, as if they, too, needed to hear what came next. Patricia stood slowly. Her designer outfit, once a symbol of status, now sagged on her frame like a uniform she no longer believed in. Her voice cracked as she faced the crowd. She cleared her throat. "I want to tell you about little Patty. Patty from the trailer park." David, the lawyer, rushed forward, hand raised like he was objecting in court. "Mrs. Delaney, I strongly advise—" "No, David, you've been talking my whole life. Now I need to be honest." She looked around. "I grew up with nothing. My mother cleaned houses. Just like—" Her eyes found the woman she'd reported weeks ago. "Just like you. She'd come home with her hands raw from bleach and broken tile grout, but she never complained. She just kept going." Even the news crew stood still. "I was so ashamed," Patricia continued. "Ashamed of food stamps, ashamed of secondhand clothes, ashamed of the sound my stomach made in the school lunch line. So when I married Rich, moved here, changed my hair, my voice, I thought I'd escaped. But all I did was become the very thing I used to hate." Letitia remained seated, watching, not judging, witnessing. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the people who hurt others most are the ones trying hardest to bury their old selves. Doesn't make it right, just makes it real." "But none of this excuses me," Patricia said firmly. "It doesn't excuse how I've treated people." She turned to Carlos. Your hands. They're just like my mother's were, and I forgot that. Carlos blinked, caught off guard. We're all just trying to make a living, Mrs. Delaney. Patricia shook her head. Please, just call me Patricia. I don't deserve the titles. Jake, the teen from the pretzel stand, stepped forward. So, what now? He asked. You tell your sad story and everything's fixed? No, Patricia replied. Nothing's fixed. But maybe it can be different. Maybe I can be different. She turned to Margaret, the customer service manager. When's the next community outreach meeting? Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Patricia nodded, then turned to the woman she'd cost a job. And I'll be calling your agency. I'll tell them the truth this time. All of it. I'll make it right. The woman folded her arms. Words are easy, Mrs. Delaney. You're right, Patricia said, which is why I'm not stopping there. She turned to the mall manager. How much does it cost to rent the community room? The man stuttered. $500 per event. Then book it, she said. Weekly. For job fairs, for housing clinics, for whatever this place has been too scared to host. She took a breath. And I'm paying out of my own pocket. Not the foundations. If I'm going to fix anything, it's time I had some skin in the game. Letitia stood. Now that's what real change looks like. Not throwing money at the fallout, but showing up to face the mess. A reporter called out, Miss James, will you be pressing charges? Letitia glanced at Patricia, then back at the cameras. Sometimes justice isn't punishment. Sometimes it's transformation. Patricia turned to her, this time with nothing to hide. I don't deserve your forgiveness. This isn't about deserving, Letitia replied. It's about choosing. Choosing to be better. Every day, in every moment, choosing to see people as people. Suddenly, a stir rippled through the crowd. At the back, an elderly woman pushed forward, her expression solid and stormless. Determined. Letitia exhaled. She knew. Something unfinished was about to walk straight through the noise. Patricia Delaney. The voice rang out like a final summons. Patricia turned, her face draining of color. Mrs. Johnson, she murmured. The elderly woman made her way forward, steady despite her age. I cleaned your house for 3 years, she said, until you fired me last Christmas for sitting down on your porch. My arthritis was flaring, but I guess dignity didn't match your decor. The crowd went dead silent. For a beat, even the fountain seemed to hush. Then the two women turned and walked toward the mall's main entrance, side by side. No words, just years of distance finally closing in quiet steps. Behind them, something shifted in the air. Not dramatic, not viral, just human. In their wake, conversations bloomed. Janitors and store managers stood together, not as staff and status, but as neighbors. A teenage barista passed free coffee to 2 exhausted security guards. No one instructed it. No hashtags needed. Letitia's security team had finally carved a path through the crowd, but she didn't move. She stood still, watching what accountability actually looked like when it wasn't rehearsed for press. Carlos, the janitor, approached her with a cautious smile. You know, Miss James, I've worked here 15 years. First time I've seen someone from Gucci wave at me with both hands. A woman in a blazer stepped out from the Nordstrom doors. Carlos, I owe you an apology. I've seen you here for years. Never said a word. Never even looked. Carlos shrugged gently. Better late than never, ma'am. The mall manager, who had spent the afternoon in a crisis loop of phone calls and PR damage control, finally lowered his phone. "Miss James, I don't even know where to begin." "Then don't," Letitia replied, cutting through his uncertainty with precision. "Just make sure it means something. Make sure tomorrow looks nothing like yesterday." Margaret, ever the efficient bureaucrat, was already typing on her tablet. "We'll have an all-staff meeting first thing tomorrow. Everyone, security, custodial, sales, cafe. We're overdue for a conversation about who we are, together." Outside, reporters followed Patricia and Mrs. Johnson through the parking lot. Through the glass, you could see them talking, really talking. Not as employer and employee, but as two women who'd finally dropped the mask of roles. Nearby, a young custodian leaned on his broom and asked softly, "You think she really changed?" Letitia glanced at him, her tone measured. "Change isn't a moment. It's a decision you remake every day, but at least now she's making it with her eyes open." The fountain kept flowing, same rhythm, same splash, but somehow it sounded different. It had witnessed a dismantling, or maybe a beginning. Frank, the security guard from the start, spoke up for the first time in what felt like hours. "In 15 years here, I've chased shoplifters, broken up fights, handled everything from Black Friday brawls to lost kids. But I've never seen anything change people like this." Letitia adjusted her now infamous law school sweatshirt, no longer a disguise but a quiet emblem of truth. "Sometimes it takes a mirror to see ourselves clearly," she said. "Today, we got to be each other's mirrors." As the sun slid down the glass dome overhead, casting long golden shadows across the marble, what happened inside was already becoming legend. The media would label it a scandal, a confrontation, maybe even a political moment. But those who were there knew better. It wasn't about a celebrity. It wasn't about optics. It was the day Marina Mall stopped being just a shopping center. It became a place where people stopped walking past each other and started seeing. And somewhere in that parking lot, a former housekeeper and her former employer were beginning the kind of conversation this country desperately needs more of. The kind that breaks cycles, rewrites stories, and rebuilds dignity from the ground up. Because sometimes the best endings are really just the beginning. And sometimes it takes one moment of darkness, public, painful, unfiltered, to finally let us see the light.